Welcome to Rags to Riches, the Ironman gear progression tailored specifically to completing the Chambers of Xerics challenge mode raid solo. From the scuffed early game Ironman gear to the endgame best in slot items, we will be recreating our gear progression by changing and upgrading gear between each raid that we complete. You don't need a twisted bow to begin doing challenge mode raids, but it certainly is a lot more fun when you do have one. Moving on to our fourth setup here, we got ourselves the Inferno Cape. I have it listed down here July 13th, 2023, which I think is only maybe a week after the previous setup we did prior. Around this time, we might have actually genuinely got the Avernic. Like I said, I did my best to replicate the entire setup, but I am missing some stuff on an Ironman that I used to have, but I don't have now. For example, Bandos Tassis. Offensively, I do believe the Blood Moon is the same as the Bandos, but I actually am handicapping myself a little bit here, as Blood Moon has like no defense. Also, I am wearing Dragon Boots, but I did have Primordials at this time. Same concept, I just don't have Primordials anymore. But yeah, big upgrade here, the Inferno Cape, as well as the Avernic Defender. Alright, without further ado, let's pod up and get in there. If you guys are just tuning into this live stream as I'm recording, or into the video, we are doing a series currently where I'm recreating the gear setups we've done throughout our many solo CM runs. And yeah, back 2 years ago, around 2023, these were the setups we were rocking with in the early days of doing solo CMs. Unfortunately, we only land the one guaranteed hammer. So things like that, obviously, we cannot recreate. These days, with some of the changes are just permanent in-game changes. So you're always going to land at least one hammer at Tecton, no matter what you do. One of the other changes is I actually did have an Elder Maul at this point already. I believe I pulled one in a regular Chambers rather than a CM. But back then, the Elder Maul was not a spec weapon. Also, while I did use a Fang back then for Tecton, I didn't know how to do this walk around 5-tick method, so I was actually 6-ticking the Fang. Which, you know, in hindsight, man, is that terrible, but that's just what I was doing back then. So only having hit the one hammer here, pretty unfortunate damage. But yeah, we do have the Infernal Cape now. The previous three runs we did, we were still rocking the Fire Cape at the time. But in the middle of the year 2023, that's when we first got the Infernal Cape on this account. Major milestone, to say the least. Oh, I horribly mistimed this. Perhaps I should have gone for the second hammer spec, because I am wearing a light bear. Just as I've explained previously in the other videos, I've been light bearer camping in these early runs, and not bringing a ring switch was honestly a mistake. Again, these are things in hindsight, like what I know now, I probably would not do some of the things that I've done. But I mean, what can you do? I'm just recreating the exact setups to the best of my abilities on how I used to run these. And back then, I light bear camped. Dude, our thrall just expired. Also, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm definitely messing up. Please. Thank you. We're going to sip the ante. Give me the revet, please. Thank you. Any good loots? Unfortunately, not so far. We still have plenty of raids to do here, though, so, you know, at some point, I think we'll get something good. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a purple either. I wouldn't mind getting a big Renard drop or something like that right now. That'd be great. But, you know, obviously, if I get a purple, I'm taking that purple, right, you know? I'm not complaining about that. Where is this scav? Hiding all the way in the back. Thank you, thank you. You know, when we get a purple, maybe we'll get a pet along with it too, where we actually are due. I don't know the exact amount of purples we have now, but I think we're in the 80s. Oh, you know what? My inventory is so incredibly full, I do have to drop these pots there to make room for my juice and mushrooms. I guess I only needed to drop one of those potions. Alright, we have enough planks to make the massive storage unit, and I actually didn't pick enough mushrooms up, so let me make sure to run back and grab those real quick before they despawn. Give me the shrooms. And the lockpick? You know what? We'll take the lockpick. Alright. A little bit out of sequence than what we normally do, but nonetheless, we are ready to chop some saplings, get some kindling, pick our tinderbox up. Wow, this tree, the sapling, broke again on the last run. This is the same exact one. Oh, messed up the timing. Let's get one full inventory here, 28. I think I failed to mention this in the previous three. I did mention in the thieving room the grubs being stackable now. Same thing with the kindling here, actually. They used to be not stackable, but these days they are. You still are capped to one inventory's worth, though. You can't get more than 28 kindling in your inventory. I'll tell you what, you know, we finally got to put the Inferno Cape on, and it looks so good in this setup. Alright, last batch of kindling. Let's hurry up and get our gear out. We're on our 4th raid now, and while the gear has changed from raid to raid, it's very incremental. And I'm starting to get accustomed to the items I'm bringing in and actually gearing and de-gearing quickly in between rooms. So between this run and the last run, we have started to bring some more melee upgrades now. Recently we got the Ferocious Gloves, and in this one we have the Inferno Cape. So that's a good couple of melee max hits right there. I'm gonna mention the lack of a ring switch again though, because I just can't believe it in hindsight. Bringing a Berserker ring would be so good. You know, it feels like the extra melee switches and upgrades is already paying off. For one thing, we hit 2 hammers on Ice Demon, and then we just absolutely annihilated it right there. Holy. Alright, on to Shamans. Oh, Okay, I was gonna ask whether or not they would cooperate. This one's gonna walk straight into a safe spot. Very nice. Summoner throw. While we're working on these shamans here, I want to reiterate, right now we are working in the middle of a series. If you guys are just tuning into the stream live right now, or later on in this video, this is actually the 4th video in this little mini solo CM series. Actually, you know, by the time we're done, I don't know if we can call this a mini series. We might have a good bit of videos. We are going to be doing more CMs where we keep... Basically, anytime we get an upgrade, we're going to do another solo CM, right? And while I'm not going to, you know... Like, next raid, I'm not going to add 1 item. I might add, like, 2 or 3 items. It just depends on how long it took me to get items at the time and whatnot. But yeah, we're going to be doing several more videos. And right now, as it stands, our gear setup is far from the max setup we have now. So, yeah, plenty more to come. And I'm curious to see how much faster we are going to get over time. Alright, final shaman. Done with. Was able to easily safe spot the 2. Nice and easy. A 149 though. Huge difference between the Bofa and the Twisted Bow. Shocker, right? I do believe if you have a shadow in challenge, even in challenge modes, the shadow is actually a little bit better than the Bofa. I could be mistaken, and things could change now with the different gear subs available. But I guess the point is, actually, in regular chambers, the shadow is better than the Twisted Bow in most rooms, which is interesting. Alright, with all the gear changes and whatnot, the one constant in all of these runs is our prep. We're going to be doing 13 juice and 8 mushrooms. Turn those into 13 brews and 8 restores respectively. Prepping the exact same way every time. You know, before it escapes us, let me just see what our completion time was on the previous run. Or is that gone already? Scroll up. That was a 48-minute and 53-second raid, which I believe is actually slower than the previous one, but I suppose that just comes down to RNG and stuff. I know for a fact on our previous run, we barely hit any hammers at ohm, so that was probably a pretty long ohm. Of course, there also could have been disparities in the regular rooms as well. I think the lack of a Berserker ring and obviously an Ultra ring, although I do believe at this point in time Desert Treasure 2 perhaps didn't exist, or even if it did, I just quite simply wasn't ready for that grind yet. I did spend a ridiculous amount of time focusing solely on chambers, even if there were perhaps some upgrades I could have gotten outside chambers. I was just determined at this stage of the game. But yeah, if you know when the exact release date for Desert Treasure 2 was, do let me know. Alright, we've re-geared, brought a couple of potions out, ready for Vanguards. Even on this 4th raid, we still did not have any damage spec weapons. No Dragon Claws, no Xerite crossbow. We are going to put our Trident on long range for this, so we don't get dragged out like that. I forgot to bring the rune pouch, so even though I have the thrall book, no thralls currently. Not to worry though, when I say I forgot, it is just in the private storage. Like, it's in the raid, I just didn't take it out. Didn't completely forget it, you know? That would have been bad. So like most people, my Ironman account is not the first account I've played on in old school RuneScape. I have a normal main account. So it's crazy to think that like in 2023, I got myself the Inferno Cape. That was already 2 years ago. Is my trident going to do any damage here? A little bit. Just a little bit. But yeah, it's been 2 years since I got my first Inferno Cape on an Ironman account. And I think it was only about a year prior, maybe a little bit more, some change, that I got an Inferno Cape on my main. But here we are 2 years later. Oh, a 55 max hit with the spec. I do believe at this point in time, my Ironman was still not maxed yet. I did get the Inferno Cape before I maxed, whereas on the main, it was the other way around. I maxed the account first, and then decided to go for the Inferno Cape. But I guess, like, having already done one cape prior, it did give me a little confidence boost to get an Inferno Cape relatively early. I say relative because, you know, I think it's the standard that most people go for the Inferno Cape after they max. At least that's what it was like back then. Maybe with all the knowledge people have now in the game and the gear upgrades and whatnot, people are a little bit more confident to go for it earlier. Oh wow, we have no food left. Luckily we got rid of that major. There is a brew on the ground if we need it. I think we're okay though. Alright, let's just deal with that real quick. It's literally 1 HP. Boom, there we go. Now rip our switches. The melee. That's not my face guard. One more hit. Get those brews over there. Thank you very much. Alright, again, we're gonna, just as we did last raid, we're gonna do some preemptive switching here to organize our inventory. We want our range gear equipped and our melee gear at the top, and then this mage gear below the melee gear, as we're gonna put that in storage. We won't need it until the final Ohm fight. Maybe another chest of grubs. We should be good. Alright, private storage. Bin all our mage gear, minus the thrall book. We need our pick, salve, a stamina, our rune pouch, which we should have already had out, but we just didn't. Alright, we need a whole bunch of restores in a brew or two. Off to Vespula we go, where we're gonna hemorrhage. Is that the right word? We're gonna bleed crystal charges. I gotta say, 4 ticking the Vespula portal is a lot more spooky than 5. You really gotta be on point here. Of course you can slow down if need be, but... with the 4 tick, you just want to go fast, you know? Make sure you're hitting every 4 tick. You know, this is exactly why people avoid the Vespula room in normal rates. And this is also why most Ironmen probably opt against doing challenge modes until they have a twisted bow. Because that Vespula room took 1 minute and 52 seconds, probably took who knows how many crystal charges, and took like 5-6 restores right there. But the reason I did challenge modes from the get-go as soon as possible was because I valued the consistency and the lack of outside resources you needed to use for this raid, actually. Moving on to tightrope here. We're going to 8 on our 15s here at 145. One more hit, and that's the majors dealt with. Onto the rangers, which absolutely smack. I gotta stop stepping back. That's not necessary unless I'm running the risk of dying. Not with the 4-tick weapon, you don't have to step back. As long as I brew at the right timing here. Ouch. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I still have a fighter torso and just Blood Moon Tassies at this point, and those are actually not better range defense options. Actually, I suppose the Tassies are, but not the torso. Okay, we'll just grab one more restore and fill our inventory up with brews, just as we've done in all the other raids. Until we have a Shadow and Ancestral, we're going to have all this room in our inventory to work with, because the mage setup, quite frankly, is not worth bringing down into the 3rd floor here if you have like a Trident or something. Not really going to use it anywhere. Now, if you didn't have a I should say, if you had a twisted bow and you didn't have the Bofa, then probably bring a trident is worth it. At least for the Muttadile room while you're chopping the tree. But I still probably wouldn't bring like a 6 or 7 or even 8-way mage switch just for floor 3 here. Unless you have the shadow. I can turn Prey melee off here. I actually took a bit of damage early at this Guardian's room. Sometimes it's just a little unfortunate, you know? You know, 26 minutes into this recording, 25 minutes into this raid. I had to double check there if I was recording. I would have cried if I wasn't. Alright, Guardians dealt with. We're going to be utilizing the Vasa teleport skip. In which I actually messed up that time. That's unfortunate. I think I may have lost a tick there. But you know what? It's not the end of the world when you mess that up, because you just do Vasa like normal. Our inventory is a bit of a mess. One more hit? Nope, okay. Thought I could sneak in one more Bofa shot there, but I guess not. Another teleport. Yeah, too bad this Infernal Cape upgrade doesn't actually help me with making my Bofa hit harder on Vasa, right? I mean, I suppose it technically helps with the crystals. You know what's actually a pretty cool look, though? When you're wearing Crystal and you have an Inferno Cape on, in which this is actually a relatively common sight to see, because obviously you don't need any ammo saving for the Bofa. So oftentimes people will elect to drop the Assembler in favor of some more inventory space for other things. Finally, Vasa goes down. That was probably over 2 minutes, I imagine. That's a 3-minute Vasa. Sheesh. That's just how it goes, though. And that's just how it was. Salve on. I think at some point here, I am going to swap the Dragon Boots into the Avernic Treads. The Avernic Treads are a little bit better than the Primordial Boots, but... you know, I'm not sure. Are Primordials closer to Dragon Boots than they are Avernic Treads? We'd have to look at the stats there, but we're not going to worry about it too much because, you know, we are incrementally upgrading here. The difference is when I finally make the jump to Prims, I think by that point we'll have so many other upgrades to where, like, that's a little bit, you know, like, indifferent, you know, it's not as important. And we're just gonna wear the Avernic Treads. Because all these runs, I've already had the Primordial Boots, technically. But I just simply don't have them available now, so I've opted to use the Dragon Boots. You know what? I just made the realization I do have a dupe pair of Avernic Treads. In which... Okay, this is not a great situation right here. I could get Mike Tyson'd. Lose! Oh, we'll just lure them over here. It's easier. Whew. Well, yeah, I just made the realization I do have a set of dupe Avernic Treads that don't have the Cerberus boots put into them. I suppose we could wear those. Couple more hits here on the Mystics, then we'll be heading into the dreaded Muttadile room. You know, Xerics knew what they were doing when they made the challenge mode layout and said, yeah, we're gonna put Muttadile right before Ulm. The very last room. They knew what they were doing. Chop the tree, please. Finally. The baby doll's going around the world right now. And comes flying in for the melee hit. I did elect to pray Augury right now in favor of some magic defense. But as soon as we're done chopping the tree like so, we're going to rip our switches into melee gear. Make sure our thrall is out. Pray Piety. Dump our Fang specs. You know, the overload timings are very odd, too. Like, we're in the middle of Muttadiles now, like, well into the middle as we're finishing up the baby doll here. And our overload's gonna expire in 20 seconds. Like, that doesn't really happen these days, but in this setup, how long it took us to get here? Yeah, odd timing. And now we have to overload while dealing with the Muttadile, which is scary. Here we go. We're just gonna brew nice and early here because I just don't even want to run the risk of even dying here. That'd be so tragic. It's always a big tilter when you die at Muttadile out of all things, because you just lose so many points. At least when you die at home, like, yeah, you still lose a lot of points when you die at home, but it's like, you know, it's the final boss fight. It's a little bit more acceptable to die there. Like, it's understandable. Okay, Muttadile room completed. 34 minutes heading into Ulm. Honestly, the pacing is pretty similar to the last two raids, I think. I did say this before, but when you're only doing one raid per setup here, it just comes down to RNG. I mean, it's like, now when we get to full Ancestral, Oath Plate, Torva, we got the mega rare items and stuff, there's going to be a clear difference, right? But when we're doing incremental upgrades like this, perhaps it might not be as apparent sometimes. We're smuggling a bronze axe out of here. Alright, where's the hammer? There's our hammer. Thank you. Again, foregoing the crystal helm just as we did in all our other runs. Just for inventory space. That's our spade. That's not a brew. Okay, we are gonna heal up here and then overload again, as weird as that sounds. Oh, and of course we are gonna sip the stamina and then bank it in favor of some other supplies. So I'll get rid of the stamina. And we will bring... Well, we don't actually have too many supplies. You know what, we'll take this 3-dose restore. I know I had like some spares in there that I can combine to make a full one, but it doesn't really matter too much. 2 restores is more than enough, I believe. Okay, Infernal Cape surely was the reason why we just hit that huge hammer spec, right? Let's make sure our staff is not a long range, so we do the 3-0 mage running properly. So interesting the way things have played out. In the early few raids, the first 2 I believe, we mostly got mage upgrades. The Aram's Top, the Ancestral Hat, and then in the more recent ones, the last 2, we got the Ferocious Gloves and we got the Infernal Cape, so melee upgrades. I can tell you now, for the longest time, our range setup is not going to change. I did already tell you that, you know, in an ironic twist of fate, that despite going for the Twisted Bow first as my first mega rare, it ultimately became the last mega rare I got. Lightning's out, so we're going to 3-1. Twice, I believe. And now we're in cycle, and the hand is dead. That was good DPS right there. Honestly, a 217... pretty good, I think. I don't know if it's just the nostalgia goggles on or what, but the 3-0 mage running and the 4-1 with the lance just seems more satisfying than the scythe and shadow methods these days. You 45 max it, okay. So when we're fully potted up at 120 magic, it's going to be a 45 max hit, okay. But I think even if it drops to like 119, then it drops to a 44 max hit, is what I'm noticing. It's actually kind of funny how long these mage hands last. With the shadow, you just absolutely obliterate it. Especially with the more recent upgrades in the Avernic Treads and the Confliction Gauntlets. Okay, it auto twice, so we're gonna have to 3-1. We're sitting just above the chance range of its max hit, and now we're below it, but we know we're in cycle, so we're not gonna get hit. We're gonna eat on our 15s here. Keep our stats up. Oh, acid. We're going to do our best to avoid damage, but it's not going to be perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We're about to get hit here, so definitely brew. It was a humble 0 on prey, though. But you'd never know. A range 43 could come out of nowhere. And I can tell you from personal experience that has happened to me on many, many occasions. And it's just one of those like discipline things. Like you think you can get away with it, you see it coming, but you're just thinking, there's no way it's gonna max hit me off prey, right? No way. And then boom, you're dead. So I do my best to just always heal if I'm below the max, or if I'm at or below the max hit. It's just not worth it, you know? Unfortunately, both hammer specs miss. Okay, we are on P3 now. Nice and easy. P3, don't reset the mage hand, just a self-reminder. That's a... Okay. That was a chance at resetting there. Oh, didn't have our torture on, but doesn't matter. Okay, so right here, the crystal came out and it autoed me twice. So I'm going to 1 to 0 here, and then I'm going to 3 to 1. And that should get us into cycle, I believe. Yep, perfect. Very glad that we at least hit 1 hammer here. In our previous few runs, we haven't had such luck on hammer specs at home, so it's been a lot more rough than it should be. That's the melee hand down. And that's the, I can't speak. I was switching in my range gear there, so I wanted to say range, because I was thinking about the range gear. But that was the mage hand. Alright, in our previous 2 head phases, we've been unable to get any timely ruby specs. Will we get any this time? Okay, we've fallen out of cycle here thanks to that flame wall. And actually a little bit before that even. Well, not a ruby, but that was a max hit. Alright. Okay, I don't even know where those pools went, so we're just gonna ignore that. Very humble tank there on the mage hit. That was off prey. In Crystal, our magic defense is better than the range defense, though, obviously. So, no rubies. Quite unfortunate. We're not going to get a single one, and at this point, I don't want one at this point, with it being just over 100 health left. But you know what? I fully expect one to happen because the game's just going to troll me that way, right? Or, you know, we can hit a bunch of zeros. Okay, wow. No rubies. That is a 46-45. Can confirm, in fact, that is a quicker rate than the last, so that's good news, I suppose. By about 2 minutes, I think. We get saltpeter and silver ore, so not very interesting there, unfortunately. But there you go. That was another raid with just one upgrade, but arguably a pretty significant one. The Infernal Cape over the Fire Cape, so that was a nice one to do. We have entered the Inferno Cape era.